Welcome to Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon. I'm your host, Captain Matt, and today we're talking about those little things that if you overlook when you own a boat are going to turn into costly headaches. So these are the important things. We're going to break it down by yearly, monthly, and every outing. So let's jump in. Number one is you've got to pull your prop at least once a year. And the reason for that is a couple of things. One is if you boat in an area where there's people fishing, there's fishing line that gets left in the water. That fishing line can easily wrap around your prop and it can get in there. And what happens is it's going to cut your seals that protect all that gear lube that's in your lower unit, lubing up those gears that make your boat go. And it can develop a slow leak. It's in the water. And you're probably not going to notice it until you have some issues. And the more that line's on there, the more it's going to cut into those seals and the bigger that leak is going to be. So you've got to pull it. And then you've got to grease that, that spline there that the prop goes on so that your prop works properly. Next, we've got your annual service. Now, when I say annual service, you've got to do, in my mind, at least yearly, every 100 hours. So gear lube, impeller, and oil change. Now, you may say, but Matt, you don't have to do it, but every 2 or 3 years. Here's my recommendation. The reason that pleasure boats have such a history and issues with repairs is because people try to stretch out their maintenance schedule and they try to save a couple $100 a year by skipping it. And eventually what happens is it causes more wear and tear on the engine. And eventually there's something goes wrong. And it could have been avoided if you just would have done these 3 simple things: gear lube, impeller change, oil change. Just do it every year. If you can do it yourself, it doesn't even cost extra couple $100. It is minimal if you're able to do the work yourself. Next is every year you need to buff and wax the exterior of your gel coat if it's a fiberglass boat. Even some of the aluminum, you need to clean it and protect it. And here's why. We operate in a harsh environment in boats. If you're in salt water, it's even harsher. But water, sun, dirt, grime, scratches, all of that stuff is going to wreak havoc, I can't speak today, on the exterior of your boat. It's going to get all chalky. It's going to get all dull. And it's going to impact the resale value. So every year, if you're down in South Florida, if you're down in Texas, if you're in a place where it's going to be, the sun is even more extreme and you've got it year round, maybe you've got it 2, maybe even 3 times, depending on if your boat's indoors, protected during the day when you're not out on the water using it. Then you might have to do it multiple times, but get those good coats of wax on it. If you've got that oxidation building up, do a round of compound on it. Get that cleaned up, get a nice good coat of wax on it, and your boat will be looking good. Your resale will be much higher. Every year, I believe you really should pull that lower unit, pull that drive if it's a stern drive. You can see on the right is Dangar Marine. He's got a great YouTube channel if you want to learn more about repairing your boat, doing stuff yourself. That he is incredible. Born Again Boating is another one that's incredible. But I really believe, one, you've got to pull the lower unit if you're going to change your impeller every year. But what happens is when you pull that, you're able to inspect things. You're able to grease things. You're able to make sure that when you do need to get it off, it comes right off because it hasn't been just sitting in that water and salt water and corroding and those nuts and bolts and everything just kind of seizing together. But when you pull it, you do the proper maintenance, it's going to make everything else that you do easier. Grease. So we talked about greasing the prop shaft. We talked about removing the lower unit. And then there are these little Zerk fittings. You can see them right here that you can just squeeze some grease into them and they need it. It keeps everything operating smoothly, moving back and forth. Again, that salt, that water, that humid air that we leave our boats in all the time where they live, that stuff needs to be lubricated. What happens with pleasure boats specifically, it's why commercial vessels tend to not have the same type of issues, because they're always maintaining them. They're always squirting grease here and lubing this and changing oil there, and they're doing their maintenance on a every couple of month basis. Us pleasure boaters tend to stretch it out as long as we can. Get that grease gun out. This is an easy one to do yourself, and squirt that grease, the proper grease, the right grease. Look in your manual. It'll tell you exactly what to do. Give it a couple of shots. And if you don't know how to use one, they're really easy to use. Again, go to Born Again Boating, go to Dangar Marine, and watch their videos. You can learn a ton there. They do an incredible job. Caulk. Okay, so you can see the caulk here. I think every year you need to go around your boat and inspect everywhere before you put it away, before you pull it out. Inspect that caulk. Is it dry? Is it cracking? Because what can happen is, yeah, it might look bad here, but what can happen is on your transom, on some of your through-haul fittings, man, guess what? There's a hole where that screw goes in that goes right into your transom. If that caulk starts to get dried and cracked out like this, what's going to happen? Well, yeah, water's going to seep in. These are below the water line, so you've got to make sure that it's all sealed up. And you need to use the right type, if it's below the water, if it's above the water, and something that needs to get done on a yearly basis, because it can be kind of the slow killer. You don't even realize it's happening, but that water is seeping in everywhere where that caulk is supposed to protect. Now, it's not a difficult job to do. It just needs to be done. You got to clean out the old and put in the new, and it'll make a world of difference. Inspecting your through-haul fittings, especially plastic through-haul fittings like these right here. Plastic deteriorates over time. If it's below the water line, it's going to deteriorate even faster. 5, 7, 10 years, it's going to fail. At some point, those plastic through-haul fittings are going to fail, and you can put brass, you can put stainless, depending on the application, but you need to inspect those, and I'm going to recommend you change them out before they fail, because if they fail, what happens? Well, your boat's going to sink. That's what happens. It's going to take on water, and it's going to be a bad situation. So not super expensive. Depending on how easy it is to get to it is going to determine if it's hard or not. But again, remember, when you have a hole through, you're going to need to caulk it. You're going to need to seal it up and protect it. So inspect those through-haul fittings. And then do your maintenance. Depending on how old your boat is, the 100-hour service, we talked about that. But also, there's a 300 and a 500-hour maintenance schedule. A lot of that is, hey, inspect this, grease that, check this. And the reason it's so important is because this stuff needs to be re-greased. It needs to be opened up and make sure that everything's okay. What could be a pretty inexpensive repair, if you don't inspect it and it's going bad, can turn into a very expensive fix. It's a cheap maintenance item. It's an expensive repair. So make sure that if you don't have your manual, get your manuals out. I've got a bunch of old ones that I've grabbed just so I could kind of reference and make some videos off it. But you can buy these for $40, $50. You can buy these online real easy. But get your manuals out and see what service is required at those intervals, and then do it, especially if you've got an older boat. Because what happens is that's when you have a catastrophic failure, because you miss something that could have been an inexpensive maintenance item, but you let it go. You let it go because you wanted to save a few $100. You didn't want to spend $700 for a 500-hour service. You didn't feel comfortable tearing into yourself, and now you've got a $5,000 repair bill. So it's so important to keep up with those things. Now, once a month. So here's some things. Another thing that can sink your boat is these bellows. If you have a stern drive, these are the little rubber boots. You've got a exhaust bellows and a shift cable bellows. They're these little rubber hoses almost that go through the transom where there's a hole in the boat that you need to get some sort of cabling out from the engine into the lower unit. You can see that they get brittle. They get cracks in them. Now, what happens when that crack turns into a split? Yeah, your boat's going to take on water. So you need to inspect those. Just do it on a monthly basis. Raise that lower unit up. You kind of look in there, poke your finger around. Is it soft? Is it supple? Does it feel like it's dry rotting? Does it feel like it's going to crack? Are you starting to see this? And then get it changed. I say do it monthly because it's a really easy visual inspection to do. And the cost of missing it is very expensive and can ruin a season. Next, we've got your fuel water separator and your fuel filters. So there could be a couple different type of filters on your boat, whether it's an inboard, whether it's a stern drive, whether it is an outboard. Look at your manual, figure out where all of your filters are. This is the easiest one to get, that fuel water separator. And you got to change that out. You've got to inspect it. Hey, is it getting corroded? Do I need to clean this up? Is it full of water? You got to check those things. And then these inline fuel filters, I believe there's a schedule on changing them. I don't know if it's the 300 or 500 hour service. I'm pretty sure it's not the 100-hour service. Check your manual and keep those filters clean, because again, if you have an issue with your fuel line, you're going to have an expensive repair, or you're going to get left stranded on the water, which is never good. Your anodes, really, really easy to overlook. If you leave your boat in the water and it's a stern drive or an inboard or even your outboard and that some of it is in the water, what happens is you've got these sacrificial anodes. I did a video on it on the channel that I did when I was selling boats. But these little metal pieces that are on your drive are below the water line when the drive's down, and they're designed to be eaten away first before it starts eating up the paint and the gear casing on your drive, okay? So they're called sacrificial anodes. They may be made out of zinc. They may be, figure out what the right material is. Talk to your local parts guy, or do some research online. Saltwater, freshwater, brackish water. They're going to recommend different things. But these anodes need to be changed. And as they get eaten away and they get about 50% of what they were originally, you need to replace them. The anode kit is maybe $200. And if you can work a screwdriver, you can change them out yourself. It's pretty easy to do. If you're not interested in doing that, go ahead and have your techs, because what happens is this repair right here is now about $1,000, $1,500 job to sand and paint it. And if it gets going further, it's going to be more expensive. It gets going further, it can eat all the way through that metal gear case, which isn't super thick. And now you've got a gear lube leak, and now you got to replace a $3,000 gear casing per motor. So keep up with those. For a very inexpensive maintenance item, you can avoid a nasty looking drive and an expensive repair. Okay, next is your pumps, your bilge pumps, your seacocks, everything that, that bilge pump is a very important safety thing. But if it's not working and you start taking on water, and that pump isn't kicking on, you could be in some big trouble. Or your boat sitting overnight and the rain comes, you could be in trouble. You want to make sure that you exercise those bilge pumps. Are they clean? Can the water get to the pump area? Lift that lever and run it manually. Does it kick on? Open and close your valves on your water system. Just do a quick inspection. Are there any loose hose clamps on your water system? All of those things could lead to your boat sinking, could lead to a very big issue that's easy enough to check. Monthly, every outing is probably unnecessary, but once a month, couple times a season is an easy thing to do. Your freshwater system, your water pumps. There's filters. That this filter is right here. You can pull that little cap off and you can clean out that filter. If you've got water sitting, it starts to get growth in it real fast, and easy. And it's easy to forget about that. Oh, there's a quarter tank in the fresh water system. You got to treat it, maybe put just a touch of bleach in it to clean everything out, and run that water through. Make sure that if you have freezing in your area, that you winterize it and then flush that out good. But those pumps, they seize up real easy. If you don't use your water system very often, that pump is going to seize up because of the harsh environment that we boat in. So if you do use your water system, just every outing, maybe spray some water to run it through, get that pump exercised, and every month or so check it to make sure that the filter's clean, that the water doesn't have any growth in it, and you're in good shape. Your batteries, and credit every month or so, just check your cables. Is there any corrosion? Is everything tight? Is it in good shape? It's going to avoid an expensive repair, and it's going to avoid you being left on the water. All of your electronics and your wiring system under your helm, just look at all the wires. Make sure you don't have any corrosion starting. Make sure there's nothing loose. Make sure it's all looking clean. And just a quick visual inspection once a month is going to help you identify if something is off. Oh man, that's starting to corrode. Now I can clean it up real quick, get a wire brush out, clean it up, put it back, and I'm in good shape, versus letting that corrosion just go and go and go and go. And now you've got a major electrical issue, and maybe it damages a component. Maybe it goes out on you at an inopportune time, and something worse happens. Every outing, if you're a trailer boater, you need to inspect your trailer. Before you leave the driveway, check your hubs, check your coupler, make sure that your tires are in good shape. Just get in the habit of checking it every time. When you dump it in the water, come back. Before you head back down to the boat, just shake your bunks. Make sure they're on there secure. Check that winch strap when you're loaded up. Check all of those pieces, because a trailer is often forgotten, and it can be an expensive, a dangerous, and a huge, huge, huge headache. Fuel, every time use 100% gasoline. If at all possible, 100% gasoline in your gas engines. Diesel, use diesel, obviously, but avoid that ethanol if at all possible. Every outing, if you're in salt water, you've got to rinse that salt water out. Earmuffs, if you've got a flush attachment, make sure you follow your manufacturer's recommendation. If you're using earmuffs, you got to bring it up to temperature. You got to run it for 15 minutes or so, so that you open up that thermostat and you get that water running through the whole system so it can flush it. If you're just flushing it with the flush, follow your manufacturer's instructions and do it for the time they recommend. You got to clean your boat in salt water. Every single time you've got to wash it down and get that salt off everywhere, because otherwise it's going to sit and it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause rust. It's going to cause damage. It's going to make everything fail quicker that it touches if you don't rinse it off. And then keep your boat clean and dry inside. This is saltwater, freshwater, it doesn't matter. Mold and mildew is just dying to get started in your boat. So I recommend every outing, you wipe those seats down with your beach towels. You get all of the sunscreen and the dirt and the grime off it just right there at the ramp before you put it away in the boathouse, back in the dry stack, wherever. Wipe it down, get it as dry as you can. If you got rained in, whatever, open up those compartments, open up the seats, and let it air out as much as you possibly can, because mold and mildew is just waiting to take hold somewhere. And once it does, you've got a everlasting fight on your hand. So try to avoid it from getting started. Try to put it away as dry as you can, and then put your cover on. And put your cover on in a way that it doesn't do this, because what's going to happen, yes, it's protected now, but eventually, if it doesn't get addressed, it's going to tear a hole in it, and all that dirty, nasty water is going to be sitting in your boat. You don't know what's happening. It's in your driveway. It's at your storage lot. You leave the cover off completely. The sun is damaging it. Put your cover on. Put it on right so it's going to be able to upstand the elements. And just because you've got your poles in doesn't mean it's going to be 100%. So you've got to make sure that however your boat sits, that tarp, that cover is going to stay tight, and it's not going to pool up, stretch out, cause damage, and because that really is going to protect your investment. Seats, Upholstery repairing, not cheap. I know it's a pain in the butt to put your cover on all the time, but it's really important to get it dry and then put your cover on. So you can either spend money to do all this stuff, or you can spend your time, or a combination of. But if you don't do it, if you say, I'm not going to put the cover on this time, I'm not going to worry about inspecting, I'm not going to pull my prop, I'm not going to do my 300-hour service, and you skip it all, and you're not willing to invest the money or the time, you're going to invest a ton of money, a ton of headaches, ton of hassle down the line, because it will catch up with you. It's really important to do those things. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. That helps YouTube know that these are good videos that people should be watching. Leave a comment. If you've got your own suggestion, something I missed, something I didn't quite explain, leave it in the comments. And remember, life truly is better on a boat.